Chapter 3952. Bayong gasps for breath, looking at the few people who want to get up but eventually helplessly fall to the ground. His hands can't help but gently tremble. His eyes pass over the few men whose throats have been cut and hearts pierced, and he can't stop the fear from lingering in his heart. Almost like Guan Santong, he would have capsized in the gutter and died in the hands of these little guys. No. These aren't ordinary little guys, but the remnants of the Shin musicians' awe. Bayong wipes the blood from his face and steps towards Mu Yen, his eyes gloomy. What is your relationship with the Shin music sect? Where did you get the Tian Mo Chin in your hand? Mu Yan's face is pale at this time, and a drop of blood is splashed on her forehead, slowly dripping down the bridge of her nose. Her originally beautiful complexion seems to be tainted with a bit of coquettish charm. Hearing Bayong's words, Mu Yen slowly raises her head and looks at him with a smile that isn't a smile. Why should I tell you? Bayong frowns. The Xian immortal behind him roars, the elder is asking you a question. Still not answering. With that, he swings the 9-segmented whip in his hand towards Mu Yan's face. But before the 9-segmented whip falls, a little chick flies out of Mu Yan's arms, making a "Ada" cry and flapping its little wings. Oh whoa! The little chick immediately lets out a pitiful cry, crying and throwing itself into Mu Yan's arms. Oh whoa, Mama hurts so much. Huang is going to go bald. How could the Xian immortal put a weak chicken in his eyes? The 9-segmented whip in his hand shakes and lashes towards Mu Yen again. However, at this moment, an insect flies out of nowhere and bites his wrist. The Xian immortal feels pain in his wrist and can't help but shake it. The 9-segmented whip turns and lashes at Bayong. Bayong quickly retreats, and then he sees the 9-segmented whip make a turn and fall directly on the Xian immortal's body, wrapping around his neck. Damn it, The Xian immortal wants to take back the whip, but when he exerts force, he can't retract the whip. Instead, he directly knocks himself unconscious and falls straight to the ground. Bayong is shocked and angry, and a faint fear rises in his heart. There are too many unimaginable things about these people. He couldn't hesitate any longer, he had to get rid of him immediately. Bayong's eyes were cold as he suddenly waved his palm. A bone-chilling wind assaults Mayan. Just as she was about to defend herself, she realized that Bayong wasn't going to attack her, but the little chick. The cold air wrapped around the little chick, turning it into a block of ice. Mayan's complexion greatly changes. Huang. Mom. I'm frozen. Mom, help. It's cold, but it's quite comfortable. Oh, I'm so sleepy. Mommy, I'm going to sleep first. A young and crisp voice rang out in his mind. Mu Yen breathed a sigh of relief and put the frozen little chick back into her space. Bayong's attacks did not stop there. He waved his hand and said, "Go and kill the others. Except for that child, don't let any of them go. You must ensure that their souls are destroyed." Yes. Bayong poured his immortal force into the long sword in his hand and slowly walked towards Mu Yen. He sneered and said, "I want to see what kind of ability you have to resist now. If other people see a Shin musician who hasn't grown up yet, they will certainly bring him back. But I don't think so." His voice revealed a sense of fear. Back then, I saw with my own eyes the Shin musicians move mountains and fill the seas, reversing the power of life and death. Even if there's only a slim chance of survival, you can still make a comeback. Chapter 3953. Since I've offended you today, I'll have to eliminate you completely. I will take the Tian Mo Chin with me, but the inheritance of the Shin musicians will forever disappear from this world. The long sword slowly points towards Mayan's heart. Shi Baiyong coldly says, thinking about it, Guan Santong's death can be exchanged for the Shin musicians' lives. It can be considered a worthy death. Little girl, do you have anything else to say? Yes. Shi Baiyong thought that he would see fear or a face that was unafraid of death. However, when a voice as sweet as the sounds of nature accompanied by a faint smile came over, what he met was a pair of clear and beautiful eyes that contained a cold smile. What a pity. I originally wanted to personally seek justice for youngest martial uncle, but our strength seems to be a little lacking. Luo Yu, who was at the side, echoed, we are indeed still too weak. Lang Yuma laughed, actually, this is also quite good. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Since it's young martial uncle's revenge, of course it's better for him to avenge it himself. Although it's only a part of it. Shi Baiyong was stunned. He subconsciously thought to himself, death is at hand. Have these little guys finally gone crazy? However, in the next moment, the expressions of Shi Baiyong and his men froze. They saw an unforgettable scene. This was also the last scene they would see in their lives. In the half-abandoned courtyard, there was only one side room that was still intact. At this moment, a figure dressed in white slowly walked out. The night slowly faded, and the light of dawn shone from the eastern sky, dyeing everything between heaven and earth with a trace of golden red. As for the man walking over, he had an appearance that was even more dazzling than the sun. An orchid, a jade tree, a peerless elegance. But just a few days ago, this person had been trampled into the mud and blood in front of Shi Baiyong, as if he would never be able to rise again. Your Highness. A terrified scream came from behind. Shi Baiyong felt his heart clench tightly along with this scream. At this moment, there were only two thoughts in his mind. Why was the first prince unharmed? Also, he was finished. The 11 swords whizzed back to Luo Yunxiao's side, and the dark holy flame above them slowly extinguished. Luo Yunxiao's frail figure swayed. She could no longer support herself. Young martial uncle. Mu Yan and the others cried out in alarm and wanted to rush over. However, they had already used up all of their spiritual power. Their limbs were sore and weak, and they didn't have any strength left. Qi Wen was still the fastest. She transformed into a huge figure and rushed over to catch the fallen Luo Yunxiao. Little martial uncle, you're too reckless. Mu Yan said with a sullen face, you were injured so badly that even if I used the saint's benevolence technique to save your life, your injuries would only heal by 50 to 60%. Even if you want to kill someone, you don't have to use your full cultivation. Luo Yu and the others nodded their heads. We've made many plans and calculated every step of the way. Do you think it's easy to weaken their strength to this extent? Isn't he working so hard so that you, young martial uncle, can use less strength in your final attack? That's right. Little martial uncle, you're too disobedient. Hearing the chatter around her, Luo Yunxiao didn't feel annoyed at all. Instead, she felt an indescribable warmth and peace in her heart. He said in a hoarse voice, I'm sorry, I was impulsive before. Chapter 39-54. Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu's actions. And that, formless karma cauldron, in the end, it still affected his temperament. Luo Yunxiao slowly spreads out his hands, looking at his palms. He doesn't care if he's stained with darkness and blood, if he'll become a monster that's neither human nor ghost. He's only afraid that one day, he'll hurt the only people he cares about in this world. Suddenly, a head comes over. Young martial uncle, what are you looking at? Admiring your beautiful hands. Luo Yu asks curiously, damn. It's really beautiful. Slender and well-proportioned, as if carved from jade. Young martial uncle, you're a man, why do you have such beautiful hands? Ling Yuma looks at her calloused hands and says gloomily, where can I, a girl, put my face? Girl? Luo Yu asks doubtfully, what does a girl have to do with you, fourth senior sister? Bastard Shao Qi, you're courting death. The sound of laughter echoes in his ears, like the sound of flowing water after the snow melts in early spring. It's also like the gentle sound of the wind amidst the singing of birds and the fragrance of flowers. That kind of warmth, that kind of contentment, that kind of peace, it makes the pain, despair, and resentment he's experienced before fade away little by little. Chiwen can't help but rub herself against Luo Yunxiao's side, her big bell-like eyes revealing a happy expression. His body is still in pain at this time. The fear and injury of having his abdomen cut open can't be healed in a short period of time. But he's very happy now. At least, he survived with his master. They're back home, back to the Xiaoyao sect. Luo Yunxiao suddenly says, you still don't know my identity and origin, and, after a pause, he continues, why even my biological parents don't allow me to live in this world. Because I am. Young martial uncle, if you don't want to talk about it, if you don't want to remember the past, you don't have to say it. Mayan interrupts him with a smile, the ends of her peach blossom eyes slightly hooked up, but it's not flirtatious, but sincere concern and frankness, your identity and origin are not important to us. You're just some demonic possession, the reincarnation of the god of misfortune. Otherwise, why would anyone predict that you'll destroy the world? Pfft. Luo Yu burst out laughing. Isn't this the villain boss that Bai Xia was talking about? Then our Xiaoyao sect will be able to hug the thighs of the leader of the righteous path, Instructor Mo, and also hug the thighs of the villain, Big Boss. Won't we be invincible in both the righteous path and the righteous path? Luo Yunxiao stared blankly for a moment, a rare expression of confusion and astonishment appearing on her face. Mu Yan continued, Junior martial uncle, think about it carefully. Who in our Xiaoyao sect has a pure and unblemished background? Shao Qi and eldest senior brother were orphans from the previous dynasty of the Lan family empire, second senior brother was half a puppet, fourth senior sister had almost personally killed her scumbag father, and fifth senior brother liked men. What about me? What does it mean for me, a remnant of the Shin musicians? Could it be that junior martial uncle doesn't know about it? The number of people in this world who hate me and want to kill me is probably no less than you, young martial uncle. Not to mention third senior brother. Mayan gives Chu Moli a sidelong glance. Until now, he still refuses to reveal even the slightest bit of his identity. Perhaps, he's the real great devil that will destroy the world. Chu Moli, who is sitting in a wheelchair, is taking the elixir that Mayan gave him and swallowing it from time to time. Hearing this, he chuckles softly and gives her a meaningful look. Mayan is disinclined to pay attention to him. She looks straight at Luo Yunxiao and enunciates each word, but what does that matter? Chapter 39:55. Martial brothers are just martial brothers, and junior martial uncle is just junior martial uncle. It has nothing to do with your identity and background. Yes. Yun Ruhan nodded. Junior martial uncle, the Xiaoyao sect's motto is to accept disciples without asking about their background. We only care about whether they are destined to be with us. If not, Master wouldn't have brought so many homeless people back to the sect. Luo Yunxiao lowered her long eyelashes and didn't speak for a long time. Luo Yu called out anxiously, Junior martial uncle. I see. When he raised his head again, the haze in Luo Yunxiao's eyes had mostly dispersed. His clear and gentle face held a moving smile. I've made you worry. From now on, he had nothing to do with the Nether Realm, Yin Wuji, and Fu Yushu. He was just Luo Yunxiao, the Xiaoyao sect's Luo Yunxiao. Chu Moli suddenly stopped swallowing the medicine and let out a soft sound of doubt. Then Luo Yunxiao, Mu Yan, and Ling Yuxing followed. Ling Yuxing frowned slightly and reached out his hand. The fluctuation of space seems a bit strange. As soon as he finished speaking, a vortex of surging spiritual power appeared in front of him. It was like the air was forcibly pulled into a circular door. A tall figure slowly walked out from the door. Swish! 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 The people of the Xiaoyao sect all drew their weapons, and their nerves were extremely tense. Immortal Xingyuan. However, Qi Wen's surprised call instantly dispersed the tense atmosphere. Qi Wen rushed to Lu Xingyuan with her injured body, and kept wagging her tail behind her. Immortal, you finally came out of seclusion. Luo Yunxiao also stood up and said in a low voice, Master. Junior martial uncle's master. That was their martial granduncle? No. Junior martial uncle had a master. Which sect was his master from? What if junior martial uncle ran away with his master? Would he still be a member of the Xiaoyao sect? The people of the Xiaoyao sect all put away their long swords, but they all looked at the person in front of them critically. He looked to be in his 30s. His appearance could only be considered ordinary handsome, but his eyes were gentle and kind. His whole body had a kind of aura that made people feel comfortable and dependent. TSK, I can't seem to hate him. Lu Xingyuan nodded slightly towards the few of them. His voice was magnetic and pleasant to the ears. Everyone, you are the unfettered seven that Yun Xiao often mentions, right? It's an honor to meet you. No, no, no. How can we let you look up to us juniors? We should be looking forward to meeting you. Lu Xingyuan's expression grew softer. He glanced at Luo Yunxiao and said softly, I heard about what happened in the Nether Realm as soon as I came out of seclusion. I thought I wouldn't be able to make it. As he said this, Lu Xingyuan's voice became a little hoarse, and his face revealed a sincere expression of guilt and gratitude. As Yun Zhao's master, it was my dereliction of duty to not be by his side at the most critical moment. Fortunately, you guys saved his life. Xingyuan is very grateful. His tone and expression were so sincere that the people of the Xiaoyao sect felt embarrassed. Yun Ruhan hurriedly said, Immortal, you are too polite. Junior martial uncle is a member of the Xiaoyao sect. He taught us and saved us several times. It's natural for us to do this, and we don't need to thank him. Lu Xingyuan nodded slightly, and showed a bit of hesitation on his face. Do you know about Yun Zhao's situation? Yun Ruhan, we don't care. Chapter 3956. No. I think it's better for you to understand. Lu Xingyuan said slowly, Yun Xiao, you didn't know much about what happened to you before. I'm sure Fu Yushu and Yin Wuji have already told you. Luo Yunxiao's face was as cold as water. She nodded lightly. Lu Xingyuan didn't wait for Yun Ruhan to object. He told her about Luo Yunxiao's birth, past, and the world-destroying soul sealed in his body. It was fine if it was someone else. When Mu Yan heard about the world-destroying demon, she used all her strength to prevent herself from losing her composure. No wonder Qi Huang and Little Uncle Master always had an extraordinary connection. No wonder Qi Huang said something happened to Little Uncle Master before he fainted. It turned out that the two of them shared the same soul. Lu Xingyuan stopped and looked at the people of the Xiaoyao sect. I'm done. Is there anything else you want to say? Luo Yu frowned. In order to seal the world-destroying demon, Bodhidharma sealed him in a special host body. But how innocent are the hosts? Why must they bear such a calamity? Lu Xingyuan sighed. When two benefits are balanced, choose the greater one. When two evils are weighed, choose the lesser one. The hosts involved in the worldly plunder are innocent, but without their sacrifice, all living beings would be doomed eternally. Bodhidharma had no choice but to make such a decision. There was an indescribable silence. Lu Xingyuan looked compassionate. He looked at Luo Yunxiao and said softly, "Yunxiao, follow me back to Xingyuan dock. I know they treat you with sincerity, but if you stay in the Xiaoyao sect, you'll harm them." Luo Yunxiao clenched her fists. But before she could speak, Mu Yan said in a low voice, "Immortal Xingyuan, forgive me for being presumptuous. What do you want to do with our little uncle master? Do you want him to take on the worldly plunder to benefit all living beings? Or do you want him to be locked in a place isolated from the world for the rest of his life so he won't take on the worldly plunder?" She paused. Her eyes darkened, and her voice was sweet but cold. "No matter which option you choose, we don't agree. We won't agree to let little Uncle Master suffer for the rest of his life. You can call us selfish or heartless, but we, the people of the Xiaoyao sect, always protect our own people." Lu Xingyuan looked at the beautiful girl in front of him in astonishment. Talent and cultivation aside, that pair of clear eyes that seemed to be able to see through the mortal world caused Lu Xingyuan's heart to tremble uncontrollably. This little girl was not simple. Lu Xingyuan's gaze swept over the pale-faced Chu Moli sitting in the wheelchair. His eyelids couldn't help but twitch. No, the entire Xiaoyao sect was far more complicated than he had imagined. They were obviously so young and frivolous, but their minds were actually more determined than the last. Towards Mu Yan's words, no one expressed the slightest objection, not even the slightest bit of hesitation. Lu Xingyuan looked at Luo Yunxiao. He slowly loosened his clenched fists. The viciousness and indifference between his brows dissipated, leaving behind a clear and unswerving determination. It was like a pine tree standing proudly in the middle of a snowstorm. No matter how much it was destroyed, its foundation could not be shaken. Lu Xingyuan sighed softly. "Yunxiao, you've also decided." Luo Yunxiao slowly nodded. "This disciple wants to stay in the Xiaoyao sect. I hope Master can fulfill my wish." Lu Xingyuan nodded. His fierce brows softened again. Chapter 39:57. He kindly looks at Luo Yunxiao and beckons him, "Since it's your wish, Master will not force you. Come here, Master has something to give you." Luo Yunxiao steps forward and respectfully takes it with both hands. Lu Xingyuan holds something in his hand and sends it to Luo Yunxiao. He gently says, "If you regret it in the future, you can find Master with this." A sudden change happens at this moment. Lu Xingyuan opens his hand and a golden light flies out. As soon as the golden light touches the skin of Luo Yunxiao's wrist, it immediately breaks through the skin like a poisonous snake. Luo Yunxiao only has time to let out a muffled groan before he falls straight down. Young martial uncle. Master. The people of the Xiaoyao sect rush over and find that a small golden cauldron has appeared on top of Luo Yunxiao's head. The golden light emitted by the small cauldron forms a light shield that envelopes Luo Yunxiao. It also keeps Mayan and the others outside the light shield, making them unable to approach. As it gently shakes, the sound of wooden fish and Sanskrit comes from the small cauldron. But it's that peaceful and Buddha-like voice that makes Luo Yunxiao's whole body curl up in pain. His body that has just been healed by Mayan starts to crack inch by inch. Blood instantly stains his snow-white clothes. Formless karma cauldron. Chiwen screams and stares at Lu Xingyuan with her bell-like eyes. "Why is the formless karma cauldron in your hands?" Lu Xingyuan lightly says, "I originally gave the formless karma cauldron to Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu. Isn't it natural for me to take it back?" I originally gave the formless karma cauldron to Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu. Even in the midst of the heart-wrenching pain, Luo Yunxiao still heard these words. His bloodshot eyes suddenly widened as he stared fixedly at Lu Xingyuan. A hoarse and broken voice slowly spilled out from between his cracked and blood-stained lips and teeth. Why? Lu Xingyuan avoids his gaze. Suddenly, he puts his palms together and says Ba. The next moment, his clothes are torn apart and replaced with a red cassock with golden patterns. This poor monk is the second disciple of Bodhidharma, Wu Che. I've been following you all these years to keep an eye on the world annihilation spirit. Because Yun Shao, you are likely to be the last host of the mortal tribulation. After 100,000 years, the catastrophe of the human world is near. Master will never allow any accident to happen to the mortal tribulation. So everything was fake. Luo Yinxiao's face was covered in blood. Her face, which was originally distorted by pain, suddenly became incomparably calm and sorrowful. Then, she couldn't help but laugh softly. My parents, my brothers, and even my most respected master, all wanted me to die, waited for me to die. What is the meaning of my existence in this world? Just so you can watch me struggle in pain like a joke, and then say that I'm pitiful. His voice was suddenly raised, with a sorrowful smile, as if all dreams had been shattered. The sounds of laughter, mixed with blood and tears, were heartbreaking. The eyes of the people of the Xiaoyao sect turned red. Their young martial uncle. They were like the clear moon and cool breeze, the high and mighty youngest martial uncle. No matter how badly he was injured, no matter how much he suffered, he never cried. Unexpectedly, he was forced into such a situation. Qi-Wen suddenly roared and pounced forward, biting Lu Xingyuan's arm. Chapter 39:58. Bastard! 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 Go to hell! How can you do this to my master? You are all cold-blooded and selfish monsters. Cough! A slender and slightly old hand grabbed Qi-Wen's neck, forcing her to open her mouth as she was lifted up high. Lu Xingyuan's eyes were merciful, and his voice was neither fast nor slow. Qi-Wen, have you forgotten that you are my demonic beast? I was the one who gave you to Yun Shao. I am your true master. Bah, you are not. Qi-Wen spat on Lu Xingyuan's face. I only have one master, and that is Luo Yunxiao. You are a selfish, righteous, and virtuous bald donkey. You are not worthy. Since you are so great, why don't you sacrifice yourself to seal the world destroyer demon? Why sacrifice an innocent person like my master? What did my master do wrong to be tortured and despised by you for hundreds of years? Debi Temple. Debi Temple is nothing to me, and Bodhidharma is nothing to me. What right do you have to decide my master's life and death? Lu Xingyuan's eyes were a bit sad, and he said softly, do you think my master didn't pay a price to seal the world destroyer demon and let the last mortal tribulation go smoothly? If I don't go to hell, who will? Debi Temple has survived from the catastrophe 100,000 years ago, and we have never fought for power. All we have done is to fight for a chance of survival for the people in the world. 1,000 years ago, my master was seriously injured in order to seal the world destroyer half-soul, and he still hasn't recovered. Qi-Wen, you can scold me, but you can't scold my master. Qi-Wen opened her mouth to scold again. The 5 fingers on her throat suddenly tightened. Lu Xingyuan's calm and indifferent voice came into her ears. Since you are so loyal to Yun Shao, you must have a high position in his heart. Then, you can go to hell. Qi-Wen. Stop. Qi-Wen heard a cracking sound in her ears. But it wasn't her neck that was broken, but the magic core in her body. In an instant, all the vitality and power quickly flowed out of her body. Was she going to die? She escaped from the nether realm with great difficulty. But in the end, he died at the hands of his master's master. Master must be so sad. Chiwen struggled to turn her head to look at Luo Yunxiao, who was trapped in the phaseless karma cauldron. His eyes were unfocused, and the voice in his ears had become distant. He could no longer see his master. He could no longer stay by his master's side. Master. I'm sorry that Chiwen wasn't able to stay by your side. Its mouth moved, wanting to speak, but found that not a single sound came out. Turbid tears slowly rolled down from its eyes and fell to the ground silently. Lu Xingyuan threw Qi Wen's corpse to the side. He placed his palms together and looked at Luo Yunxiao. Luo Yunxiao had a pair of extremely beautiful hands. It was as translucent as cold jade, as if it had been chiseled and polished, but it did not give off a feminine feeling at all. Instead, it was slender and powerful, with distinct joints. Even the most miraculous craftsman could not carve such a perfect work. However, at this very moment, his fingernails were peeled off and dripping with blood as they clasped onto the defensive barrier of the phaseless karma cauldron. Qi Wen. Qi Wen. Qi Wen. He wanted to rush out and save Qi Wen. He wanted to save the only spirit pet that had accompanied him all these years. But he couldn't do anything. He could only watch as Qi Wen's magic core shattered. Just like that, she died in front of him. Chapter 3959. Lu Xingyuan can't bear it anymore. He lowers his eyes, his lips open and close as he recites a series of Buddhist scriptures. The formless karma cauldron, hanging above Luo Yunxiao, emits a dazzling light. He utters a shrill scream and slowly falls down. The harsh sound of the wooden fish and the Sanskrit sound entangle his brain and soul like a curse, bit by bit, making him unbearable. And the hatred and darkness that slowly grows in his heart makes him unable to suppress something in his body, wanting to rush out. The sound of the zither rings out at this time. It was very light and weak, but strands of it persevered and drilled into his brain. His heart that was about to be infected by darkness is torn back from hell. Luo Yunxiao struggles to open his eyes, his mind is clear for a moment. But he doesn't have the slightest joy. Seeing the scene outside the golden shield, he only feels that the sky is falling and the earth is cracking, his liver and intestines are breaking. The moment the sound of the zither rings out, Lu Xingyuan's face changes. He suddenly looks at the girl playing the zither, his pupils violently shrinking. The hoarse voice is shocked and clear. You are the successor of the Shin musician. So that's how it is, you are the person related to Yunxiao's fate in the divination. No wonder you could help him find the yin and yang twin hearts, the 12 evils of Dutian, and the 36 stars. The girl playing the zither is expressionless, just constantly plucking the strings. As the sound of the zither lingers, another figure that looks exactly like her appears. Holding the 7 absolute sword, a cold light radiates from his eyes, neither afraid nor retreating. Lu Xingyuan is startled. The phantom doppelganger, you have actually cultivated the phantom doppelganger, that can only be activated by a level 7 Shin musician. At such a young age, with the cultivation of a golden immortal, you can actually achieve such a level. Amitabha. In terms of talent, you are not inferior to Bailey Yinlu in the past. This poor monk should be glad to meet you here, otherwise if you were given a little more time to grow, I'm afraid that the entire Shushan continent will suffer another catastrophe. Mu Yan sneers, I find you people from Dabii Temple really funny. Your words are compassionate, but your actions are all dirty and cruel. You said that I am the successor of the Shin musician, that I will bring a catastrophe to the Shushan continent, so you must kill me. You're talking as if you'd let us go if I weren't the successor of the Shin musician. Lu Xingyuan was stunned for a moment, then laughed bitterly, you're right, benefactor. This poor monk has been oversensitive. Although I had no choice, this penniless monk still has to apologize to you. In order to successfully complete the red dust ambush, you have no choice but to die in my hands." When he said this, he expected to see the 7 little fellows' frightened and angry expressions. However, unexpectedly, the 7 people on the other side were very calm. He was calm to the point of indifference, and there was a hint of mockery in his indifference. That kind of blatant mockery made Lu Xingyuan, who had a firm heart towards Buddhism, feel ashamed. He subconsciously wanted to avoid their gazes. He said in a low and magnetic voice, "The mortal ambush is to save the common people of the world, but it is also incomparably cruel. This poor monk only hopes that this cruelty can be put to an end by Yun Shao." The purer his original temperament was, the greater the impact on his world-destroying half-soul when he was infected by the darkness. The more thorough his resentment before his death, the more the world-destroying half-soul will be worn down. At this point, he finally slowly raised his head, his eyes clear and firm as he looked at the several people. Chapter 3960. There are too few people and things that Yun Shao cares about in this world. Qi Wan is one, and you are the other. Only by killing you in front of him can the mortal ambush completely end. From then on, there will no longer be an innocent host like Yun Shao in this world. In this short moment, Lu Xingyuan had convinced himself and strengthened his belief. His eyes were clear and his face did not have the slightest trace of guilt or retreat. There was only the compassion and resoluteness to save all living beings. If you say that killing you is a sin and torturing Yun Shao is a sin, then this poor monk is willing to bear the sin of karma in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, a wooden fish suddenly appeared in his hand. The wooden fish was blood red, and even the mallet was red. Lu Xingyuan raised the mallet and knocked it lightly. With a bang, all the spiritual power and immortal energy in the world vibrated. Mu Yan's face changed. Her fingers that were already playing the zither quickly became faster, so fast that she could almost see its afterimage. Star field. Divine hand weaves the sky. A protective shield made of sound walls shielded the unfettered 7 suns. However, the impact of the wooden fish hitting the stars only lightly hit the shield. Mu Yan suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The sound wall also broke. An immortal prime. That was an existence that they couldn't fight against even if they risked their lives. Lu Xingyuan, stop. Luo Yunxiao's hoarse, pleading voice came from the non-phase golden shield. Don't hurt them. If you want me to hate, I will hate. If you want me to die, I will die. I only beg you not to hurt them, Lu Xingyuan, master. I beg you. I don't want anything, family, warmth, humanity, kindness. I can give up everything, as long as you let them go. The eyes of the Xiaoyao sect people turned red. Luo Yu choked, little martial uncle, don't beg him. They don't have a heart. The Xiaoyao sect will live together, and we will die together, okay? Even if we go underground, Master will be waiting for us. None of us will be lonely. However, Luo Yunxiao suddenly looked at the 7 and hissed, as the little martial uncle of the Xiaoyao sect, I order you to run. Run as far as you can. Do you hear me? From now on, I, Luo Yunxiao, have nothing to do with the carefree sect. I'm not your junior uncle, I don't need you to meddle in my business. Get lost. Get lost. The members of the Xiaoyao sect couldn't hold back their tears anymore. Even Chu Moli, who had always been cold-hearted and unfathomable, suddenly tightened his grip on the armrest of his wheelchair. His eyes were dyed red like blood. Yun Ruhan, Qin Zhou, Chu Moli, Ling Yuma, Ling Yuxing, Lan Luoyu. Jun Mayan. Did you all hear that? Don't worry about me anymore. Don't die in front of me. I don't want anything. I only hope that you don't die in front of me." The cries were hoarse and sorrowful, like nightingales crying blood. The people of the Xiaoyao sect felt as if their hearts were being crushed by the roars. They cried silently, and their hearts were broken. How could their little martial uncle, who was like an immortal crane in the clouds, show such a desperate expression and say such humble words? However, they could not retreat. There was no way out. Lu Xingyuan would not allow them to escape. As long as they turned around, what awaited them was only a broken, cowardly, and embarrassing death. Chapter 3961. If it's still death. Why don't they die in a dignified manner? At least they can't disgrace the name of the Xiaoyao sect. Lu Xingyuan glances at Luo Yunxiao. Seeing the bloody tears flowing from his eyes, the desperate and painful look on his face, he tightens his grip on the Mikujio. But he quickly hardens his heart and walks towards the people of the Xiaoyao sect. As he gets closer, the Mikujio sounds again and again. Every time it hits, it shatters the sound wall that Mu Yan painstakingly weaves. The front part of her clothes was already soaked in blood. Her fingers on the Tian Mo Qin are riddled with holes and blood drips down. Nyangqin. Nyangqin. Let me go out and help you. Nyangqin, don't help me in there. Nyangqin, I beg you. Xiao Bao's mournful cries resound in her ears again and again. Mu Yan turns a deaf ear. Her spiritual power had already been depleted in the battle with Shi Baiyong and Guan Santong. Now she can withstand Lu Xingyuan's seemingly careless attacks. She was overdrafting her life, overdrafting her soul essence, inch by inch. But at this moment, she can't care about anything else. The same goes for the people of the Xiaoyao sect. They don't want to die. But they will never allow someone to torture their little martial uncle to death in front of them. Xiao Bao, you must listen carefully to what Nyangqin is going to say next. In the midst of Xiao Bao's heart-wrenching cries, Mu Yan uses her last bit of strength to transmit her voice. Xiao Bao, do you remember what Nyangqin said? Also, Bai Xia, Fat Rabbit, Chiu Chiu, Jinwu, Huang Huang, do you hear me? You must. Please protect Xiao Bao for me. Then, what does Xiao Bao say and what does Bai Xia and the others reply? Mu Yan can't hear it clearly anymore. She had no other choice but to take a gamble regardless of everything. If she wins, everyone will have a chance to live. If she loses, she will live and die with the Xiaoyao sect. But before she dies, she must at least arrange a way out for Xiao Bao. Di Mingju, if you were by my side at this moment, it would be great, dong. Another sound of the Mikujio is heard, accompanied by a powerful shock wave. Mu Yan fiercely spits out a mouthful of blood, her chest burning with anger. Her blood-stained fingers were cold and numb, as if they no longer belonged to her. However, it was still not enough. It was not time yet. She had to hold on a little longer. She wanted to fight for that last chance. Motherfucker. I'll chop you up, you bald donkey. Ling Yuma suddenly clenched her teeth, raised the red lotus soul-stealing blade, and soared into the sky. Fourth senior sister, no. Mayan lets out a heart-wrenching scream, her injured fingers strumming the strings with all her might. The phantom doppelganger also summoned the 7 despair swords to stop Ling Yuma. But he was still a step too late. Ling Yuma rushed out of the range of the sound wall. The red lotus soul-stealing blade turned into a monstrous flame and slashed towards Lu Xingyuan. Her face was filled with an indomitable will to fight. There was no retreat, no fear. Doesn't she know that rushing out like this is a dead end? Of course I know. But how could she watch as little martial uncle begged with tears of blood? How could she watch as little Marshall's sister overdrew her soul essence in order to protect everyone? She knew that junior sister was waiting for that opportunity. But she was the senior sister. How could she let junior sister risk her life to protect her again and again, while she enjoyed it with a clear conscience? Chapter 3962. If there really was a chance, then she would use her life to exchange for it. Little monk, I'm sorry, I might not be able to wait for you to return to the secular world and marry me. Boom! The rolling flames engulfed Lu Xingyuan. However, no one thought that such an attack could kill an immortal lord. When the flames dissipated, the faces of the Xiaoyao sect members were pale, and they couldn't stop shaking. They saw that Lu Xingyuan was holding a Buddhist staff in his hand. One end of the staff pierced through Leng Yumao's body. Blood flowed down the cold Buddhist staff, dripping like the tears of the Grim Reaper. Fourth sister. Bastard, I'll kill you. With a roar, the divine beast Bays rose to the sky. The absolute space realm was activated. Layers of ice froze the ground and Lu Xingyuan's feet. The giant 1,000-ton hammer fell from the sky like a small mountain. The 7 absolute swords buzzed under the sunlight and reflected a dazzling light. At this moment, everyone from the Xiaoyao sect was ready to risk everything. Fight to the death, fight to the death. However, in the face of absolute power, all the tragedy and determination seemed so pathetic and laughable. An immortal lord. Even in the Xuxian continent, he was a top existence. Lu Xingyuan was a disciple of the Debi Temple's Bodhidharma and was even more powerful than the Nether region's lord, Yin Wuji. How could a few fledgling golden immortals like them contend against it? The beach seemed to have been stained with layer after layer of blood. This time, the blood was especially cold and desolate. Lu Xingyuan stood in the pool of blood, put his palms together and softly chanted, Amitabha. It was already commendable that 6 golden immortals could last so long in his hands. Such talent was rare in the world. He wasn't inferior to them at all. But today, he had to kill them. He had to use their lives and blood to complete the last completion of the mortal ambush. Lu Xingyuan couldn't help but look up at Luo Yunxiao. After hundreds of years of living together, it was impossible to say that he had no feelings for this disciple. If there really was a heaven-defying array in this world, he could find another way to destroy the world destroyer half-soul. Even if he had to go against his master's orders, he was willing to try. However, there was no other way. Apart from the red dust ambush, there was no other way to destroy the world-destroying half-soul, and there was nothing that could stop the 100,000-year samsara catastrophe. Therefore, Luo Yunxiao, his only disciple, must die. Moreover, he had to die in endless pain and hatred. Lu Xingyuan blinked his eyes to get rid of the moisture in them. He walked step by step to the side of the Xiaoyao sect. Every time he passed by someone, he would gently knock the wooden fish in his hand. His face was filled with endless compassion and compassion. However, when the wooden fish was knocked down, it would be a fatal blow that would pierce through the heart. Lu Xingyuan had always been known to be gentle and meticulous in Debi Temple. Since he had made his move, he wouldn't give the Xiaoyao school any chance to fight back. Make sure that the little guy on the ground is dead. He chanted Amitabha and moved on to the next one. A light drizzle had begun to fall from the sky. The rain washed the blood-stained sand. It was also washing away the corpses that had already lost their vitality. Far away, the waves rolled and curled. It was as if a mournful melody was being played, breaking one's heart. Chapter 3963. Lu Xingyuan finally stops in front of Mu Yan. Half of the girl's body is soaked in sand and blood. But the half of her face that is exposed is still so holy and flawless, bright and moving. Lu Xingyuan's mind unconsciously emerges the scene from 1,000 years ago. The red-clothed youngster burned by the raging fire. And the sorrowful, regretful and desperate cry of the master of the god music sect, Bailey Yin Lu. The god musicians and the demon of destruction. These two sides always seem to be entangled, bound by cause and effect. 1,000 years ago, to destroy the demon of destruction, Qi Huang, the god music sect must be eliminated first. It is still the same today. Lu Xingyuan raises the staff in his hand, looks up at Luo Yunxiao, and says in a hoarse voice, "Yunxiao, you told your master that you liked a woman. Presumably, she is the successor of the god musicians. In that case, you can watch carefully now. Watch how I kill her and end your karma." Lu Xingyuan's voice comes to an abrupt stop, staring at the person in the golden light shield in a daze. Luo Yunxiao has stopped crying at some point. Even when he took away the last trace of the Xiaoyao sect people, he didn't make the slightest sound. At that time, Lu Xingyuan was led by a kind of sad and desolate emotion, so much so that he didn't notice this abnormality. At this moment, Luo Yunxiao's skin has long been broken beyond recognition. Every inch is stained with blood, revealing the eerie white bones. His mind is riddled with holes, and will be annihilated at any time. The non-phase cauldron above his head is still flashing with golden light, and the sound of the wooden fish and Buddhist chants enter his ears. Every sound is painful and torturous, every sound is the abyss of hell. But Luo Yunxiao doesn't seem to hear or feel anything. He just stares at Lu Xingyuan with his red and cold eyes. As if he wants to deeply engrave his appearance into his soul, bring him into reincarnation, and never forget. If he still has reincarnation. Lu Xingyuan's heart beats uncontrollably. He has seen too many mortal tribulations and the appearance of his victims before they die. But there has never been a host that makes him as frightened as Luo Yunxiao, giving birth to an indescribable fear in his heart. Lu Xingyuan composes himself and softly says, "Amitabha." Then, he raised the mallet in his hand and knocked it down slowly. However, at this moment, the sound of an arrow piercing through the air could be heard. Lu Xingyuan suddenly stopped knocking on the wooden fish. A dazzling golden light shot out from his eyes. The mallet in his hand had already disappeared. He raised his slightly wrinkled hand in mid-air and gently caught it. In the next moment, a pure black arrow was caught between his fingers. Lu Xingyuan looked at the arrow in his hand with a rare look of surprise on his face. "It's the arrow of curse." His figure disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, the 5 fingers of his right hand were already firmly wrapped around Chu Moli's neck. He slowly lifted him up from the wheelchair. "Amitabha, even I didn't expect that there would be so many crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the Xiaoyao sect. It's fine to have a Shin musician successor. There's actually someone who can master the curse art to such a level." Lu Xingyuan looks at the frail young man in front of him, who looks as if he will break at any moment, and gently shakes his head. The Shin musician is certainly terrible, but the successor of the curse is an even more terrible existence. Even Master hasn't been able to figure out the identity and origin of your curse clan. The curse art you've displayed is the most exquisite I've ever seen in my life. Chapter 3964. Chu Moli, right? Fortunately, I met you when you were at your weakest. Only in this way could he eliminate the root of the problem without any future trouble. It would also reduce the possibility of a calamity descending upon the world. Lu Xingyuan's fingers were about to exert force. But he saw the pale youth slowly raise his eyelids and meet his gaze. His black and white eyes were calm and gentle, even carrying a trace of an indecipherable smile. "Master Xingyuan, right?" I don't know if you noticed, but I shot 2 arrows. Lu Xingyuan was startled and he quickly turned his head to look. When he saw that the formless karma cauldron didn't cause any accident, and that Luo Yunxiao was trapped inside, he was relieved. Then, he heard the youth's low and hoarse voice with a hint of a smile. You looked in the wrong direction. It wasn't easy for me to shoot those 2 arrows. I prepared them for so long, how could there be a slight deviation? Buddha said, if I don't go to hell, who will? Since Master wants our Xiaoyao school to go to hell, why don't you accompany us? Lu Xingyuan's complexion changed greatly and he suddenly turned his head to look. The scene that entered his eyes caused his pupils to suddenly contract. Not far away, he saw a young girl in snow-white clothes slowly walking out of the forest covered by tall trees. A group of beauties are hard to chase, the heavenly fragrance of beauty. Her beauty could topple a city, and her elegance was unparalleled. It was June Mayan. But how could it be June Mayan? Her doppelganger had clearly been destroyed by him, and even her original body was on the verge of death. Could it be that the 2 he killed were only phantom doppelgangers? Lu Xingyuan looked over in shock. He saw the young girl's corpse, which he thought was the original body, slowly dissipating. That was actually only a phantom doppelganger. June Mayan, who was in her early 20s and had the cultivation of a small golden immortal, had actually cultivated 3 phantom doppelgangers. The most frightening thing was that it was hard to distinguish the real from the fake. Even he didn't notice it, so that the 2 doppelgangers that were seen by his eyes were dumbfounded. Chu Moli's low and joyful voice once again came to his ears, Master Xingyuan, our Xiaoyao school has always been hospitable. Next, my junior sister will properly entertain you. We will be waiting for you in hell. Lu Xingyuan softly chanted Amitabha, then suddenly exerted force with his fingers, snapping Chu Moli's throat, and threw his corpse to one side. Benefactor Chu seems to be a little too arrogant. He actually thinks that you can fight against me. Lu Xingyuan conjured a golden Buddha's light that enveloped his hands, slowly expelling the contamination of the curse technique. His gaze fell on Mu Yen without blinking, and there was some curiosity on his face. Benefactor Jun, even this poor monk is very curious now. Even if you have a 3rd avatar, what can you do to me? With just a golden immortal and a little girl, would she be able to survive a moment in the hands of an immortal venerable like him? As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Xingyuan suddenly disappeared. In midair, he made a grabbing motion and a golden staff appeared in his hand. He smashed it towards Mu Yen. Then, Lu Xingyuan saw a scene that shook him to the core. At some point in time, a black aura began to swirl around the girl's chest, condensing into an arrow. That was the cursed arrow that Chu Moli had shot out. But it was very clear that this arrow was completely different from the one that attacked Lu Xingyuan. Its goal wasn't to injure or kill. It was to break. At some point, a blue halo appeared around the girl's body, firmly blocking the cursed arrow. Chapter 3965. But in this world, there is no energy more powerful than the corruption of the curse. As time goes by, a small black hole gradually appears on the blue halo. The blue halo keeps shaking, and mottled cracks begin to appear behind it. There is a loud bang. The blue halo and the arrow of curse disappear at the same time. Mu Yen slowly raises the 7 absolute sword in her hand, her face as cold as frost, her eyes like stars. A gust of wind suddenly rises, sweeping up the gravel on the ground. The trees in the jungle behind her are blown askew, making a rustling sound. The sea roars, rolling up monstrous waves. Between heaven and earth, spiritual power and immortal energy begin to form huge whirlpools and hurricanes, wrapping around Lu Xingyuan. Heaven and earth give birth to the 5 elements. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, complement each other, but cannot coexist. Once they coexist, it becomes barren, unable to cultivate. But the moon's spirit root is different. It is like the ancestor of all things, with its light, with its dust, all-encompassing, without beginning or end. When the 5 spirits gather, the primal chaos is formed. Only a true moon spirit root can master the unique power of the world, the power of the 5 elements. Under the power of the 5 elements, I am the only king. Only my command is the truth. Disobey, die. Rebel, die. The world is vast, all spirits obey. Lu Xingyuan, who was not shocked when he learned of Chu Moli's identity, is now completely shocked. The power of the 5 elements. She has mastered the power of the 5 elements. How can someone at this age, with this cultivation, master the power of the 5 elements? A creepy feeling runs up his spine, and his whole body is covered in a thin layer of sweat. Above the sky, countless dark clouds begin to gather. That represents the deterrence and fear of the heavenly way. The power of the 5 elements, that is a power that can go against the heavenly way. Swish! Mu Yan swings her sword, shaking the world. Lu Xingyuan immediately shakes his robe and sets up a shield around himself. However, not long after the protective barrier was set up, an invisible force forcefully tore the protective barrier apart. Boom! The sharp sword light hits his chest, causing his face to pale. A fishy taste rises in his throat, and he forcibly swallows it back down. So this is the power of the 5 elements. On the shore of the Bohai Sea, there were floating islands, mountains, rivers, and seas, and all living beings. At this moment, he had become the little girl's combat power, a hand that wanted to crush his life. Lu Xingyuan's figure kept retreating towards the direction of the sea. At the same time, his hands quickly formed hand seals. With a speed that could only be seen by the naked eye, he set up layer after layer of barriers around his body. Mu Yan doesn't chase after him right away. Instead, he raises his hand, and collects the corpses of his senior and junior brothers and Qi Wen into the Tian and Mo Qin space. He then raised his sword and slashed at the formless karma cauldron that was trapping Luo Yunxiao. Boom! The phaseless karma cauldron swayed, but the barrier of light did not dissipate. Mu Yan clenched her teeth and swung her sword again. The phaseless karma cauldron emitted a teeth-numbing cracking sound, but it still failed. Why? Mu Yan's eyes are completely red. They had given everything they had, but why couldn't they save little Martial Uncle? She was indignant. How could she accept this? The sky that had been cleared just a moment ago was now covered by dark clouds, and the night was dark. The rumbling thunder was like the final talisman of death, ringing in his ears over and over again. There's no time. Mu Yan, listen to me. A hoarse male voice resounds in her ears, causing Mu Yan's hands to tremble and stop her slashing motion. Chapter 3966. She lifted her eyes and looked at little Martial Uncle. She didn't know if it was because the sky was too dark, or because the smell of blood was too heavy, but her vision was blurred. However, that familiar voice was still so bone-chilling and gentle. It was as if at this moment, all his kindness and gentleness were used up. In this life, I will never regret being a member of the Xiaoyao sect. In this life, I will never regret falling in love with you. If there is no next life, then remember what I'm saying now. If there is a next life, I hope you can call me little Martial Uncle again. Mu Yan, let's go and find the one you should find. At least one person of the Xiaoyao sect should survive, at least one person should be happy. Mu Yan's eyes widened. She heard herself screaming at the top of her lungs, broken, messy, crazy. She couldn't even hear the words, "Little Marshall Uncle." She had a lot of things to say. She wanted to tell Little Marshall Uncle that Big Marshall Brother and the others were not dead. Before the battle, she used the skill, Nirvana of Stars, to give them a chance to live. She wanted to tell Little Marshall Uncle that the Xiaoyao sect only had one Little Marshall Uncle. She wanted to protect him even at the cost of her own life. How could she watch him be tortured to death? She wanted to tell Little Marshall Uncle that no matter what he had experienced, no matter what kind of suffering he had suffered, as long as he returned to the Xiaoyao sect, everything would be over. They would use the warmth of home to make Little Marshall Uncle forget his suffering. From then on, he would live a peaceful and happy life. No one could bully or hurt him anymore. She was the king of the 5 elements. But at this moment, she could do nothing. She could only watch Little Marshall Uncle shatter his heart, lose his vitality and die under the torture of the formless karma cauldron. Mu Yan walked towards Luo Yunxiao step by step. As soon as she got close to the formless karma cauldron, the light shield was bounced off and her body was burned. She approached again and again, but was bounced off and burned again and again. Tears blurred her vision, but it couldn't blur her clear and desperate mind. Little Marshall Uncle was dead. The Xiaoyao 7 lost their master on the cultivation continent. And they lost Little Marshall Uncle on the floating island. From then on, they were orphans. May we live forever in this life and night, free and unfettered forever. That night, the moon shone brightly in the starry school and the stars shone brightly. The melodious music of the guqin mixed with the sounds of laughter still lingered in their ears. They clinked glasses with each other and said the warmest and most sincere wishes. Back then, Mu Yan had thought that with a moon like this, with the sounds of laughter and the aroma of wine, she would have no regrets in the future, no matter what dangers she faced in the hell of Mahanata. But how could she have thought of that at that time? In this life, this night is not long. That night is eternal. Eternity was like a shooting star. It only lasted for a short period of time, but it was deeply engraved in one's heart and could never be recovered. Rumble. The thunder that had been hovering in the sky for a long time finally fell. The 7 absolute sword in Mu Yan's hand was struck by the lightning, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Her internal organs felt like they were being overturned, and the pain from the scorching flames gradually made her mind clear. Her eyes were dyed even redder by the blood. He suddenly turned his head to look at Lu Xingyuan, who was on the surface of the sea, and his figure turned into a bolt of lightning as he charged over. It was this person who killed young Marshall Uncle. It was him who sent young Marshall Uncle from the human world to hell again and again. It was him who mercifully dominated young Marshall Uncle's miserable life. She could no longer avoid the divine punishment thunder. Chapter 3967. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Boom! A sword slashes out, moving mountains and overturning seas. The barrier that Lu Xingyuan has just laid down is instantly destroyed. But there's not much fear on his face. Because he knows very well that the power of the 5 elements is too much for the current Mayan. She simply can't hold on for too long. Lu Xingyuan doesn't even need to expend too much energy, he just needs to watch quietly from the side. He can watch Mayan's body collapse on its own because it can't bear the power of the law. This is also good. Killing the ruler of the 5 elements, he will also suffer the backlash of the 5 elements. Next, he has more important things to do. There's no need to hurt himself to deal with a puny golden immortal. Ding-ling. Just as he's thinking this, a melodious sound of a zither reaches his ears. Then Lu Xingyuan finds that the tip of the sword that was close at hand has disappeared. On the contrary, a white and ice-cold hand suddenly clasps his shoulder. Prison drawing. A low, hoarse female voice rings in his ears. Immediately after, a ray of light shrouds the surroundings along with the sound of the zither. Lu Xingyuan finds that his body can't move for a while. He looks up at the girl close at hand, and gently shakes his head. Do you think you can kill me like this? Benefactor June, you underestimate the strength of a venerable immortal. The power of the 5 elements is powerful. But no matter how powerful a heavenly sacred artifact is, in the hands of a tender child, it's just a pile of scrap iron. Mayan grins, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. The girl's smile is bright and moving, her peach blossom eyes rippling with light, but for no reason, it exudes a bit of bone-piercing chill. Old bald donkey, go to hell. Lu Xingyuan's complexion suddenly changes. The robe he's wearing suddenly swells up. The golden pattern above emits a dazzling light. He wanted to use the fastest speed to escape from the drawing ground imprisont's restraints. He wants to stay far away from this crazy little girl in front of him. But it's still too late. The sky is densely covered with dark clouds. It's pitch black everywhere. There's the rumbling of thunder everywhere, intertwining with the lightning tearing through the sky. So much so that Lu Xingyuan doesn't notice. Unknowingly, most of the heavenly punishment thunder and the purple lightning have already appeared around the two. Lu Xingyuan looked at the little girl as if he was looking at a monster. She actually controlled all the 5 elements and brought them to her side. But it wasn't to attack. Instead, it was to draw all the divine punishment heavenly lightning to himself. From the moment Luo Yunxiao committed suicide to the moment she rushed to the Bohai Sea, she was already prepared to die with him. Lu Xingyuan had to admit that this was indeed the most effective way to kill him. But in this way, June Mayan herself would undoubtedly die. Lu Xingyuan opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. But in the next moment, a loud clap of thunder drowned out his voice. Rumble. 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 Dense lightning fell from the sky. The 7 absolute swords trembled and wailed as if they were crying. At some point, the sound of the zither had also dissipated between heaven and earth. The thick clouds in the sky were torn apart, leaving huge cracks one after another. Through the crack, one could see the Milky Way and the sea. It was boiling, the stars moving, and 1,000 years passing in an instant. Mu Yan slowly closed her eyes, allowing the heavenly lightning to penetrate her body and tear her soul apart. Tears slowly fell from the corners of her eyes, but before they could drip into the sea, they had already been blown away by the strong wind. Chapter 3968. The heavenly thunder came so quickly and fiercely that Mu Yan didn't even have the time to review half of her life. She didn't even have the time to say goodbye to Xiao Bao and Di Jun in her heart before she was completely taken away by the intense pain. Therefore, she didn't notice that the void spirit ring on the ring finger of her left hand suddenly burst forth with dazzling light. The concentrated thunder lasted for 2 hours before it slowly stopped. The huge tsunami engulfed the beach and the jungle not far away. All the living beings on the floating island who did not see the battle trembled in fear. Finally, the dark clouds dissipated, and the blue sky reappeared. The tumbling sea calmed down and became quiet and peaceful, as if nothing had ever happened. On the surface of the sea, the 2 figures fighting with their lives on the line were long gone. Another quarter of an hour passed. More than half of the forest had been washed away by the huge waves. Fierce beasts poked their heads out and approached hesitantly, as if they wanted to see what was happening here. However, at the next moment, a figure darted out of the Bohai Sea. The ferocious beasts paused for a moment before fleeing for their lives. Lu Xingyuan struggled to climb to the shore, gasping for air. Looking at his current sorry state, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. The shining golden robe had become tattered at this time. Large and small burn scars crisscrossed on his body. The power of the godly punishment heavenly thunder was simply too terrifying. He had to use 100% of his power in order to withstand it. Even so, he still suffered serious injuries, and even the robe his master gave him was completely destroyed. Lu Xingyuan could not help but turn his head to look at the calm sea. He was only affected by the divine punishment heavenly thunder, yet he was already in such a sorry state. That little girl had withstood almost all the heavenly lightning. She was probably dead for sure. This was good as well. The Shin musicians should not exist in this world. The inheritor of spell should not exist in this world. Heaven and earth had a vast righteousness, it should be merciful to the world, it should deliver all living beings from suffering, and it should slay the devils. For them to die on this floating island, it could be said that they died a worthy death, it was karma. Lu Xingyuan put his palms together and chanted Amitabha in a low voice. Then, he began to chant the rebirth mantra. Buddha is merciful. Even the most heinous criminals would try their best to redeem themselves. This life of sin, I hope that my little friends can bear good karma in their next lives, and live a peaceful life. After chanting the rebirth mantra, Lu Xingyuan continued forward. Most of the beach was submerged. The place where Luo Yunxiao's corpse was lying was now covered by seawater. However, the phaseless karma cauldron hovering above him was still dutifully emitting a faint golden light. Mu Yan did not know what was so special about the mortal plunder and kill. When she saw Luo Yunxiao commit suicide and shatter his heart meridian, she thought that youngest martial uncle was already dead. However, Lu Xingyuan knew that the host of the world-exterminating half-soul would not die so easily. If it was so easy to kill someone, Yin Wuji, who had been on tenterhooks for hundreds of years, would have long disregarded the agreement with Debi Temple and made his move. There was only one way to kill Luo Yunxiao. That was to make his heart completely black with hatred, resentment, violence, and other dark emotions, resonating with the world-destroying half-soul. Only then would the world-destroying half-soul leave this body, and this round of mortal tribulation would be over. Only then could Luo Yunxiao, who was the host, be killed. Lu Xingyuan formed a seal with both of his hands and chanted. Chapter 3969. The phaseless karma cauldron, which had dimmed a little, suddenly shone brightly. The sound of the wooden fish and the Sanskrit chant suddenly became louder, lingering between heaven and earth. Painful moans came from the murky seawater. Lu Xingyuan was shocked. Through the phaseless karma cauldron, he could already feel that the resonance between the world-destroying half-soul and Luo Yunxiao's divine soul was getting more and more synchronized. Just a little bit more, and he would succeed. Could the world-destroying half-soul he took out this time be killed? Could he finally complete the task his master entrusted to him? Dang! 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 The heavy and vigorous sound of a bell rang in Lu Xingyuan's ears, causing him to suddenly stop his hand seals and chanting. The first reaction in his mind was, what is this sound? It's so familiar, yet so strange. It was as if he had heard it once, 1,000 years ago. Lu Xingyuan's pupils shrank and he looked down in disbelief. He saw the murky seawater bubbling gently. Then, he saw a blood-stained figure slowly stand up from the seawater. His hair and clothes were stained with mud. Blood soaked through every inch of his skin. The tall figure swayed slightly, thin and weak, dirty and miserable. But under the messy wet hair, there was a pair of blood-red eyes, staring unblinkingly at Lu Xingyuan. Lu Xingyuan staggered and almost fell to the ground. A bone-piercing chill rose from every inch of his bones, draining all the blood from his face. At this moment, he finally understood why the sound of the bell was so familiar. The bell of heaven and earth, the cry of the 9 souls. That was the death knell for all living beings in the world and all living beings in the 3 realms. That was the bell of the world-destroying demon, the ghost bell. Opposite him, Luo Yunxiao took a step forward. The mud and blood around him dissipated, revealing a peerless face that could turn all living beings upside down. However, her hair, which was as black as a waterfall, had already turned as white as blood. One night of heartbreak, one night of sorrow, one night of white hair. His long hair hung down, seeming to merge with his white clothes that fluttered in the wind. It was as bright as the moon, without a speck of dust. However, there was a pair of crimson, cold, and blood-red pupils, mixed in with a pure, spotless whiteness. It was so dazzling, so breathtaking. Lu Xingyuan suddenly used his left hand to grab his right hand, stopping his body from trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't that he was a coward, but his instincts made him feel an unparalleled and irresistible fear from the bottom of his heart. Was this the endless world-destroying demon that had reincarnated for 100,000 years? Was this an existence that even Master was afraid of? But how could this be? Luo Yunxiao did not produce resonance with the world-destroying half-soul. He had completely absorbed the world-destroying half-soul and fused his soul with the world-destroying half-soul. Lu Xingyuan couldn't imagine what would happen next. But he was very clear about one thing. He screwed up. Under his coercion and torture, Luo Yunxiao had not been able to complete the mortal tribulation. Instead, she had become a true world-destroying demon. If he was allowed to leave alive, what kind of catastrophe would befall the 3,000 living beings? How could he have the face to return to Debii Temple to see his master? Master, haven't you always hoped that my soul would be tainted by the darkness and filth so that I could synchronize with the world-destroying half-soul? The young man's voice was still cold and indifferent, but it was like jade rubbing against each other, indescribably attractive. As he walked forward, he carefully tidied up his clothes. Chapter 3970. After wrapping his sleeves and buttoning his clothes, he looked at Lu Xingyuan and slowly said, "Now that I've done it, aren't you happy for me, master?" Lu Xingyuan's lips trembled, and he subconsciously stepped back, splashing water. He tried his best to stabilize his body and hoarsely said, "Yunxiao, you shouldn't have done that. Fusing with the world-destroying half-soul, your consciousness and soul will gradually be swallowed up, and you will no longer be you. What's the point of living like that?" There was no expression on Luo Yunxiao's face, and his voice was indifferent. "There's no point." "But master, have you forgotten? Just now, the meaning of my life has completely disappeared. Xiaoyao School, Jun Mayan. Since they've all disappeared, why are you still alive, master? Why do all the people in this world still want to live?" Sunlight fell on the young man's face, making his skin as translucent and white as snow. He clearly had a pair of bewitching blood-red eyes, but his temperament was still like blood from heaven, holy, pure, and inviolable. However, his words were so ruthless and cold that Lu Xingyuan couldn't help but tremble. "Since the Xiaoyao sect is gone, I'll make the world disappear too. I'll go join them. Amitabha." Lu Xingyuan put his palms together and slowly chanted the name of Buddha. His eyes emitted a resolute light. "Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I'll definitely stop you." 6 hours later. The night sky was dyed red, and the bright moonlight once again sprinkled on the earth. Luo Yunxiao looked at Lu Xingyuan, who had fallen in front of him. His eyes were deep and blood-red, without the slightest reflection of starlight. Lu Xingyuan slightly opened his mouth, gasping for breath. Looking at that pair of eyes, a trace of pain and regret welled up in his heart. 1 thought to become a Buddha, 1 year to become a demon. He was the one who forced his only disciple to become a world-destroying demon. Was he wrong? For the world's common people, for his master's entrustment, he was duty-bound without hesitation. But, did he really do the right thing? Yun Shao, stop, turn back, it's too late. A ball of black flame sprang up from his chest and burned Lu Xingyuan's body completely in the blink of an eye. Luo Yunshao looked at the empty beach, and his lips slightly moved. He seemed to want to laugh. But that beautiful face was so stiff, unable to make any expression. From the moment the Shaoyao sect disappeared, he had lost the ability to smile. Master, you said repent and be saved. Luo Yunshao slowly enunciated each word, but I've already lost my only shore, my only home. I can no longer return. If this night does not last, where will I see the bright moon next year? He would never be able to find that carefree, warm and happy long night again. Clang clang clang. The deep and distant sound of the bell rang in his ears again and again. Along with it was a low chant that came from the distant horizon. The gods had disappeared, the devils had perished, and the tens of thousands of bones in the vast Dongming Sea had withered. The heavenly Tao was in chaos, the end of life, the 9 underworlds' yellow spring's tribulation. 3,000 worlds lingering in the clouds, 10,000 years of the mortal world passing by. The heavens have forsaken me, and the heavens can also be deceived. If the world forgets me, the world shall destroy me. Gods and Buddhas, listen to my words. Since ancient times, karma and evil fate. In the cycle of reincarnation, this hatred would never be extinguished. Luo Yunshao didn't seem to hear the song echoing in his ears. He just stared blankly at the rolling waves, as if he was possessed. From dark to daybreak, and from daybreak to dark again. His divine sense spread out endlessly, searching the entire sea inch by inch. Chapter 3971. Every 2 hours, Luo Yunshao would ask softly. Jun Mayan, are you still alive? As long as you're alive, will you answer me? Yun Ruhan, Qin Zhou, Chu Moli, Ling Yuma, Ling Yuxing, Lan Luoyu. Have you all returned? Again and again, again and again. Until his voice was hoarse and his blood ran cold. The ringing of the spirit bell grew more and more urgent, and the heavenly lightning began to gather above his head once more. Luo Yunshao finally realized. No one answered him. No one would call him little martial uncle anymore. No one would risk their lives to protect him, no matter if he was a human or a demon, no matter how strong or weak he was. There was no Shaoyao school in the world anymore. The last bit of light in his heart, the last piece of pure land, finally disappeared completely at this moment. Luo Yunshao closed her eyes. A trace of coldness rolled down from the corner of his eye. The moonlight shone on this glimmer of crystal, like the last ray of light between heaven and earth. From then on, there was only endless darkness. From then on, there was no more warmth or laughter. How about the 3,000 worlds? So what if they were all living beings? If the Shaoyao sect can no longer exist in this world, then what right do you have to live on? Luo Yunshao's figure disappeared. At the same time, in another small world. He thought that Mu Yan's soul had already flown away and scattered by the divine lightning, but he was actually experiencing the pain of his flesh and bones being crushed and recombined. 8 hours ago in the Shushan continent. The great war between the polar domain, the demon race, and the nether realm was originally on the verge of breaking out, but in the end, it ended in an inexplicable manner. After the nether realm army retreated and Di Mingju left. Elder Chang was certain that the demons no longer had the will to wage war with the polar domain, so he quickly ordered the troops to withdraw. During this period of time, the upper echelons of the polar domain stayed up all night to guard the universe mirror and Defeating Army's soul lamp. Day after day passed. Defeating Army's soul lamp flickered from time to time, dimmed from time to time, and was almost extinguished. Moreover, Han Yi and the others, who have entered into a master-servant contract with Di Mingju, feel their hearts palpitate even more. This is a situation that will only occur when Di Mingju encounters a life-and-death crisis. Elder Chang and the others felt as if their hearts were in their throats. Every minute and every second was torture. Just when Xing Lang and the others couldn't help but want to rush to the Yinwu continent, the Qianquan mirror that has been quiet all this time finally shines with a dazzling light. Then, two figures stepped out of the mirror. Jun Shang. Elder Chang and the others almost cried tears of joy. During this period of time when there was no news from Di Mingju, every day felt like a year for them. Without Jun Shang's polar domain, it's like it doesn't have its backbone, and it could fall apart at any time. Fortunately, Jun Shang is back now. Moreover, he even saved defeating armies. Truly worthy of being their Jun Shang awe. No matter what kind of danger it was, it couldn't stop him. Just as Elder Chang was thinking about this, he suddenly heard the Star Wolf scream, "Juanshang, what's wrong? Shut up." Di Mingju coldly scolds, and uses his qi gene to push away Xing Lang's outstretched hand. Soon after, he pushes defeating armies away. His voice was hoarse and cold, "Go get the King of Medicine immediately." Defeating armies staggered from the push and almost fell to the ground. He didn't even bother to adjust his awkward posture, as he abruptly turns to look at Elder Chang. "Did you hear that? Quickly go get the King of Medicine. Jun Shang won't be able to hold on much longer." Defeating armies' temperament has always been cold and indifferent. Even if Mount Tai were to collapse in front of him, he wouldn't change his expression. But right now, his face is full of anxiety, and he even roars at Elder Chang. Chapter 3972. Seeing that Xing Lang wanted to help Di Mingju, defeating armies hurriedly said, "Don't get close to Jun Shang, don't touch him, Jun Shang he." After a pause, defeating armies struggled to finish his words. "Jun Shang's godhead is on the verge of collapse, you must not touch him, and you must not cause any energy fluctuations. Guard Lingxiao Hall, no one is allowed to get close to Jun Shang before the King of Medicine arrives." Elder Chang and the others were shocked and they heard this. Godhead is about to collapse. How is this possible? Elder Chang no longer questioned defeating armies, he quickly took out a talisman and burned it. In the dazzling fire, Han Chuzhou's slightly unhappy baby face appeared. "Brother, what are you doing? I was preparing teaching materials for my baby disciple, you suddenly sent me a message, making my hand shake and the fire increased by 3 parts. The result is not over. Little Joe, come to Lingxiao Hall. Jun Shang has an accident." Han Chuzhou was stunned, he sat up slightly, but said, "Accident? He's an immortal emperor with a domineering attitude. Who could make him? Little Joe." Elder Chang's voice suddenly rose. Han Chuzhou's eyes sank. He finally realized that Elder Chang was not joking with him. Something really happened to Di Mingju. Han Chuzhou threw away the herbs in his hand, stood up abruptly, and shouted, "Wait, Laozi will be there right away. Before I arrive, no one can touch him." As soon as Han Chuzhou entered the door, Elder Chang immediately activated the mechanism of Lingxiao Hall, closed all the entrances and exits, and opened the protective enchantment. "Little Joe, Jun Shang's body is collapsing, quickly see if there is a way to stop it." Han Chuzhou was shocked. He had already prepared for the worst, but he didn't expect the situation to be worse than he had imagined. Godhead collapse. That is a real fatal injury. When a cultivator reaches the immortal king realm, there is a certain chance that they will be reborn and transform their mortal body into an immortal godhead. Once the godhead is molded, it can transform the spiritual power and immortal power between heaven and earth into divine power through the dantian. The magical power performed by divine power is 100 times more powerful than immortal power. As for cultivators who were both celestial kings and celestial venerables, it would not be an exaggeration to say that there was a world of difference between the abilities of cultivators who could use divine power and those who could not. In the entire Shushan continent, there were no more than 1,000 cultivators who possessed divine power. Among them, Deming-ju is the most special existence. Because he'd already condensed half of his godhood when he was at the peak of the mysterious immortal realm. Invincible under the same level, this was the evaluation everyone in the Shushan continent gave to this new emperor of the polar domain. It is also because of Deming-ju's astonishing talent and awe-inspiring innate talent. The godhood he had condensed was the most stable. Even if he was covered in cuts and bruises, as long as he survived, he would be able to recover quickly, and his strength would even rise to the next level. His powerful self-healing ability, as well as his confidence in turning the tables against the strong, came from his stable and powerful godhead. But now, Deming-ju's godhead has begun to collapse. Once his godhead collapsed, his cultivation would fall. Even their lifespan would be greatly shortened. From then on, they would be plagued with all sorts of illnesses, and even the celestial decay stage 5 would occur prematurely. At that time, the polar domain would be finished. Han Chujo suppressed the shock in his heart, and quickly formed a seal with his hands. Under the brilliant light, the heaven void cauldron, which has shrunk by dozens of times, floated in the air. Chapter 3973. If someone saw this scene, they would be so shocked that their eyes would pop out. Because the things that Han Chujo lost were all priceless treasures. Among them were even the phoenix grass and kunlun wood that he got from Deming-ju in exchange for saving his life. Either of these two treasures would take 1,000 years to mature. And they could only grow in the heavenly Wu Mountain, which was covered with black ice all year round. For thousands of years, 9 out of 10 people who entered the heavenly Wu Mountain would die. Only the immortal emperor could come and go safely. At that time, Deming-ju was poisoned by a mutated nightmare ghost. It was Han Chujo who combined the Shin musician skill, Summer Bug's language of ice, provided by Mu Yen with the golden silkworm insect, that detoxified the poison of the Chonggui. At that time, Deming-ju promised to bring him the phoenix grass and kunlun wood within a year. Less than half a year later, when Deming-ju's immortal emperor realm was stable, he went deep into the heavenly Wu Mountain and picked up the two treasures. Han Chujo was ecstatic when he got the phoenix grass and kunlun wood. He was afraid of dropping them in his hands, and afraid of melting them in his mouth. He even slept with these two treasures every day, thinking about how to treat them in his dreams. Later, he kept saying that he would keep these two treasures. When his baby disciple came up, he would show them off in front of her. But at this moment, he did not hesitate to throw these two treasures into the heavenly void cauldron like garbage. He met the shocked eyes of Elder Chang and the others. Han Chujo widened his eyes and said, "What are you looking at?" Deming-ju owes me all the treasures in this cauldron. When he wakes up, I will make him work like an ox and a horse, and pay me back 100 times. Elder Chang couldn't help but laugh. After laughing, his nose was a little sour, and his eyes were a little red. Because of the curse, little Joe's appearance looked like a young teenager, and his temperament was getting more childish every year. But he also watched Jun Shang grow up with him. At that time, Jun Shang, with a cold face, would call him Grandpa Chang and Little Joe Gidge. Han Chujo, who was already 1,000 years old, had a black face on the spot, but he still carefully treated Xiao Juanshang's wound. Little Joe had never changed, he was just a hard mouth and a soft heart. Pejuan, tell me, what's going on? Why did Jun Shang suffer such a heavy injury? Where have you been all this time? Elder Chang was comforting him when Star Wolf's low and angry voice suddenly came from behind him. At this moment, he was grabbing Defeating Armies' lapel with one hand and his other hand was clenched into a fist. The anger in his eyes was about to materialize and spit out. If this was not the critical moment for Han Chujo to treat Jun Shang, Chang Lao has no doubt that Xing Lang will directly punch him. Among the four great imperial guards, Defeating Armies, Frosty Knight, Ing Mei, and Star Wolf, Defeating Armies has the highest cultivation. He was also the only one among the four who had condensed a godhead and could use divine power. Normally, Han Yi and Star Wolf are very apprehensive of Defeating Armies, not daring to rashly provoke him. But right now, seeing Di Ming-ju so heavily injured, the string of reason in Star Wolf's brain completely snapped. He would rather Pejuan die outside like that than to see his revered Jun Shang suffer such a heavy injury. Defeating Armies closes his eyes, grabs Star Wolf's wrist, and forcibly pulls down the hand that was clasping his lapel. Only then does he look at Elder Chang, and says in a hoarse voice, "I left Jun Shang with the motherly seal, did Jun Shang receive it?" Chapter 3974. Old Lady Seal. What Lao Pa Seal? Han Yi and Ing Mei don't know about this matter, and they reveal curious expressions when they hear this. Star Wolf had seen the old granny seal left behind by Defeating Armies. However, he didn't know exactly what message was left behind in the matron seal. Now that he heard Defeating Armies mention it, he couldn't be bothered to be angry anymore. He hurriedly asked, "What message did you leave for Jun Shang? What are you doing in that damned Yanwu continent? Do you know that because of your recklessness, Jun Shang has fallen into danger time and time again?" Among them, Elder Chang was the only one who did not speak. Instead, he looked at Defeating Armies quietly. Defeating Armies clenched his hands into fists, then slowly loosened them. After a long while, he said in a slightly hoarse voice, 12 years ago, Jun Shang was seriously injured because of a tribal riot at the border of the polar domain. He went into closed-door training for 5 years before coming out again. You should all still remember this matter, right? Han Yi knits his brows. Of course I remember. But what does this have to do with Jun Shang's injury today, and the Lao Put seal you left behind? That was Di Ming-ju's heaviest injury. They almost thought that Jun Shang wouldn't be able to hold on. For nearly 5 years, Di Ming-ju has been in seclusion in the forbidden area of the polar domain. It's unknown whether he's alive or dead. Because there had been no news of the sovereign for a long time, the people of the polar domain were anxious, and the nether domain was ready to make trouble. As one of the 4 great emperor's guardians, the 4 of them did not have a good time during that period. Naturally, it left a deep impression on him. Defeating Armies continued, you all thought that during those 5 years, Jun Shang stayed in the polar domain's forbidden area and didn't go out, right? Han Yi and the other 2 look at each other, their faces revealing doubt. Isn't that the case? Defeating Armies slowly shook his head. That's not the case. In the last year of Jun Shang's seclusion, I stood guard outside the forbidden area as usual, but I suddenly felt a strange energy fluctuation coming from inside. The barrier that prevented people from entering dissipated on its own. After I entered, I discovered. He paused before continuing, Jun Shang has disappeared. What? Han Yi and the others cry out in alarm. Jun Shang disappeared in the Polar Domain's forbidden area. How is this possible? Star Wolf angrily grabbed Defeating Armies' collar and angrily said, "Why did you only say such an important thing today? Don't think that just because you're an old man by Jun Shang sighed, I won't dare to beat you up." Star Wolf. Elder Chang berated in a deep voice, "Let Defeating Armies finish his words first." Only then did Star Wolf angrily let go. Defeating Armies continued, "After I entered the forbidden area, I didn't see Jun Shang's figure. I wanted to go out, but I found that the barrier had closed again. I was trapped in the forbidden area. I was trapped for a few months. Suddenly, one day, the strange energy fluctuation appeared again. His lordship returned to the forbidden area, but he was severely injured. His godhead was on the verge of collapse, and it was even more serious than it is now." Starwolf fiercely clenched his fists, seeming to want to curse something, but he forcefully endured it in the end. Han Yi says in a low voice, "But when Jun Shang came out of seclusion, not only was he unscathed, his cultivation had also advanced. What happened after that?" Defeating Armies laughed bitterly and shook his head lightly. "In fact, I'm not sure what exactly happened. Because at that time, Jun Shang only appeared for a moment and then disappeared again. It's as if it's being pulled away by some kind of power. At that time, I was very scared. I always felt that if I let Jun Shang be pulled away, perhaps Jun Shang would die. I only touched a little bit of the damage caused by that energy fluctuation, and I felt as if my 3 souls and 7 mortal forms were being torn apart, and my godhead was on the verge of collapse. And Jun Shang was in the center of that energy fluctuation." Chapter 3975. Han Yi and the others suck in a mouthful of cold air, their complexions extremely unsightly. Defeating Armies continues, "At that time, I wanted to break through the barrier and inform Medicine King and Elder Chang, but I failed. The barrier was incomparably strong, I simply couldn't get out. Time passed like a year in the forbidden area. Just like that, another month passed, and Jun Shang appeared once again. It's only been 7 years, but Defeating Armies always feels that it's been a very, very long time. Probably because, for a very long time, he couldn't tell whether everything that happened in those months was real or an illusory dream. The forbidden area is dark and cold. Only the light coming in from outside the cave's barrier can illuminate the monotonous and desolate furnishings inside. As Defeating Armies is in a daze, a strange energy fluctuation appears again. Immediately after, a familiar figure appears in front of him. Defeating Armies is simply ecstatic. Jun Shang. He rushes over, wanting to help Di Mingju up. "Jun Shang, where have you been these days? What about your injuries?" Di Mingju waves his hand, adjusting his breathing for a while before saying, Ben Jun also couldn't tell what place it was, but the air was filled with the aura of desolation, and there were no fluctuations of spiritual power or immortal power. If Ben Jun didn't guess wrong, it should be the Yanwu continent. It turns out that Di Mingju was forcibly transported to a cave at that time. That cave was dark and cold, without any spiritual power or immortal power, but it was filled with a large amount of desolation. For a spirit cultivator, that kind of environment is simply terrible. But this still isn't the most frightening thing. The most frightening thing is that there's a special arrangement around that cave. Cursed land. And it's the cursed land that only targets the Li Fire bloodline. As long as Di Mingju wants to leave, the cursed land will attack him, slowly destroying his soul and godhead. Di Mingju tried several times, but not only did he not succeed, his injuries worsened instead. It's also because of those injuries and the exhaustion of his divine power. He has no way to resist the erosion of the desolation, and his body becomes weaker and weaker. The first time he returned to the forbidden area of the polar domain, he exhausted his last bit of strength, and didn't hesitate to consume his spiritual essence to fight for a slim chance of survival. But in the end, he failed. He was pulled back by that mysterious and strange energy fluctuation, and his injuries worsened. Just as defeating armies had predicted at that time. Unless there's a miracle, Di Mingju will undoubtedly die when he returns to the cave. But what's strange is that the injuries on Di Mingju's body are still very heavy this time, but his godhead has stabilized, and the death energy lingering around his body has also completely dissipated. Defeating armies was overjoyed. "My lord, have you found a way to deal with the land of the cursed god?" Di Mingju is silent for a moment, the tips of his ears inexplicably red. He then says, "Someone helped Ben Jun." When he said this, his usually stern face revealed a rare guilty expression. He dodged defeating armies' gaze. She didn't answer his question about who that person was. Instead, she asked softly, "Do you know how to, ability?" Di Mingju is silent for a long time, then he says in a low voice, "To win a girl's favor." Defeating armies thought he had misheard. What did Jun Shang say? Make a girl happy. Was this their callous and heartless Jun Shang, who could even throw a stunning female cultivator away when she came within half a foot of him? Defeating armies opens his mouth slightly, unable to say a word for a long time. The uneasiness in Di Mingju's eyes gradually turns into disgust. "If you don't know, then go find someone to ask. 3 days later, Ben Jun will come ask you again." Chapter 3976. Defeating armies. Wait. Jun Shang, you still want to go to that land of the cursed god? It wasn't easy to get rid of such a dangerous place. How could Jun Shang go back again? Di Mingju keeps a straight face, faintly saying, "That girl is very timid, she can't leave Ben Jun for even a moment. If Ben Jun doesn't go back, what if she cries alone?" Defeating armies. You just asked how to please a girl. Now you say she can't leave you for even a moment. You really don't feel that your words are contradictory? No, the point is, what kind of woman could make Jun Shang care so much about her? He's really curious, and he can't help but ask the doubts in his heart. Di Mingju gently touches a piece of vermilion jade on his waist, coldly saying, "What does what kind of woman she is have to do with you? You only need to know that she is Ben Jun's wife." Defeating armies. No. Is Jun Shang jealous of him? Just because he asked about that woman's situation? If it weren't for the powerful and familiar pressure that Di Mingju is emitting, he would suspect that his Jun Shang has been possessed or impersonated. Moreover, Jun Shang directly calls that woman his wife. It's enough to show that Jun Shang really likes her, to the extent that he can't have her. But who is that woman? How is her innate talent? Does she have the qualifications to be the mistress of the polar domain? Is she a spy sent by the enemy to Jun Shang's side? Isn't it too hasty to recognize her as the mistress of the polar domain without knowing any of this? What's more, Elder Chang used the Luoming Pan of the Hunyuan River to calculate that Di Mingju's marriage fate is different from that of ordinary people. He will have a woman of destiny. That is destined to belong to Jun Shang. And Jun Shang, who possesses the world's one and only sun's spiritual root, can only get the greatest improvement and pry into the peak of the great Tao by combining with the woman of destiny. If Jun Shang marries an ordinary woman from the Yanwu continent, what will happen to the woman of destiny? Defeating armies hesitates to say something, but when he meets Di Mingju's eyes, he can't say any of the words that are on the tip of his tongue. Ever since Di Mingju's mother, the Holy Empress of the Polar Domain, Bai Xingwei, passed away, defeating armies has never seen an expression other than callousness on his Jun Shang's face. He was clearly not a cruel and arrogant person, but he had wrapped himself in a thick layer of ice, unwilling to show even the slightest bit to others. Defeating armies has never seen such a vivid expression on Di Mingju's face. There was joy, faint sweetness, apprehension, anticipation, and even shyness. Such a Jun Shang would no longer be that aloof and remote symbol that supported the polar domain. Instead, he would be a living, flesh and blood person. Defeating armies suddenly thought, who is that woman? So what if they were spies? As long as Jun Shang can continue to live like this, what harm is there in letting her stay by Jun Shang's side? Jun Shang. Pajun coughed lightly and changed his question, what is that girl's name? Where do you live in the Yanwu continent? Do you need me to tell Elder Chang about the wedding? Defeating armies' rare nagging gradually stopped. Because he finds that his Jun Shang's complexion is very unsightly. After a long while, he heard the man almost grinding his teeth, Ben Jun still doesn't know her name. Cough, cough, cough. Defeating armies almost choked on his own saliva. Jun Shang, how did you meet that girl? Chapter 3977. Di Mingju slightly tilts his head. A few days ago, she broke into the cave and was trapped with Ben Jun in the land of the cursed god. Defeating armies hesitantly asks, Jun Shang didn't ask about the girl's identity. I did. Di Mingju grits his teeth even more. He did ask, but she refused to tell him. She was even afraid of him, which makes him annoyed. But he can't get angry. Because he also knows that on the first day, he was delirious and went too far. These 2 days, he used up all the ways he never did in his life to make that girl change her opinion of him a little. Di Mingju's words are almost jumping out one word at a time. Vague and unwilling to say it out loud. Defeating armies listens for a long time, and finally understands. Their Jun Shang forced a little girl. Although it's because of the effects of the land of the cursed god and the barren air invading his internal organs, making Jun Shang look like he's been drugged, delirious and completely out of control. But defeating armies is still shocked. This is even more of an impact to him than when the poltergeist broke through the enchantment and destroyed the Shushan continent. In vain, he just cared that the little girl was a spy sent by the enemy to murder Jun Shang. Defeating army swallows, not knowing whether to reprimand or comfort their Jun Shang for a moment. After a long while, he dryly says, this subordinate will look for someone to ask how to please a girl. Di Mingju nods, and can't help but gently stroke the vermilion jade on his waist. Defeating armies glances at it, and asks with some doubt, Jun Shang, where did this jade come from? How could it not be crushed in such a powerful energy fluctuation and space distortion? It is reasonable to say that there is a very stable space barrier between the Shushan continent and the Yanwu continent. Things from the two continents can't be exchanged. Especially from the Shushan continent to the Yanwu continent, anything will be crushed in the space barrier passage. And from the Yanwu continent to the Shushan continent, if it's a treasure, Di Mingju can use his divine power to protect it, and there's still a chance to bring it back to the Shushan continent. But this vermilion jade is clearly ordinary, without even a little bit of spirituality. Jun Shang is seriously injured now, and can't use even a tenth of his divine power. But the jade actually passed through the space barrier passage, and followed Jun Shang to the polar domain's forbidden area unscathed. Di Mingju slightly tightens his lips, saying in an indifferent voice, she gave this to Ben Jun, defeating armies. Jun Shang, are you sure you didn't steal it? Also, you obviously want to show off, so don't pretend that nothing happened. Defeating armies wanted to ask more clearly. He had a feeling that the woman was not simple. With this kind of vermilion jade, it can also save Di Mingju, whose godhead is on the verge of collapse. That was not something an ordinary woman could do. If he could obtain the vermilion jade or ask about the woman's appearance, he might be able to secretly investigate. It's just that, looking at Di Mingju's treasured appearance, Defeating Armies also knows that he absolutely won't be able to borrow vermilion jade. It's already been an hour. Di Mingju suddenly realizes something, and his expression changes. Ben Jun will go back first. Saying that, without waiting for Defeating Armies to react, Di Mingju has already disappeared from where he stood. That strange energy fluctuation was still powerful and terrifying, making it impossible for anyone to approach. But this time, Defeating Armies wasn't as worried as he was before. Jun Shang is safe and sound. Moreover, he seems to have a girl he likes. Chapter 3978. Jun Shang has a woman he likes. The polar domain may soon have a new mistress. Miss, did you see it in the sky? Defeating Armies didn't say the rest of his words out loud. Instead, he repeated them in his heart. Miss, I will protect your child for the rest of my life. I won't let him end up like you. Jun Shang will definitely be happy. After expressing his gratitude, Defeating Armies decided to listen to Jun Shang's words and find someone to ask about how to make a girl happy. Ingmei couldn't do it. She was too cold and never came into contact with girls. The Star Wolf couldn't do it, he was too stupid. His mind was only filled with Jun Shang and couldn't hold anything else. Han Yi can't do it either. Normally, he behaves like a dissolute gongzi, but in reality, the amount of time he spends with women isn't as long as the amount of time he spends following behind Ingmei. Elder Chang and the King of Medicine were even more out of the question. What Jun Shang wanted was a girl's heart, not a granddaughter. TSK. Defeating Armies frowned in annoyance. Then who should he consult? Was he going to put on a pair of sunglasses and become a playboy? But Defeating Armies soon realized that he didn't need to worry about who to consult. Because he couldn't get out. That enchantment had still trapped him. Defeating Armies can only wait in place, waiting for Di Mingju to come back 3 days later and open the barrier to let him out. However, 3 days passed. Di Mingju didn't come back. Defeating Armies felt uneasy. Another 3 days passed, and there were still no energy fluctuations in the forbidden area. Just as Defeating Armies was burning with anxiety. Suddenly, the air in front of him twisted violently, and the entire forbidden area seemed to have fallen into a spatial vortex. A loud bang resounded in his sea of consciousness. Something burned his brain, and then he completely lost consciousness. At this point, Defeating Armies gently pressed his temple. Under everyone's shocked gazes, he slowly continued in a hoarse voice, "After I woke up that time, I found myself sleeping outside the forbidden area. Everything that had happened in the past few months had become very blurry in my mind. I even thought that it was just a dream. In the dream, I saw Jun Shang seriously injured, and in the dream, I heard Jun Shang tell me that he went to the Yanwu continent and met a woman he liked. I had my suspicions as well. But very quickly, Jun Shang came out. He was completely unscathed, and his strength had even gone up a level. I once asked him if he had been to the Yanwu continent, but Jun Shang didn't have the slightest memory of this. So I became more and more convinced that it was just a dream. The only thing that I care about is probably that piece of cinnabar jade that has appeared on Jun Shang's waist. I have a vague memory of this piece of vermilion jade in my mind, but every time I try to recall it, my mind will become chaotic, as if my memory has been covered by a layer of fog, causing me to unconsciously give up exploring it. Defeating Armies' gaze swept over everyone present, his hoarse voice rising slightly. This situation continued until more than a year ago, when I met Little Master in Jun Shang's small world. That memory, which had already been blurred, suddenly seemed to have been brushed away by dust and mist, becoming clear all at once. I clearly remember that Jun Shang was sent to the land of the cursed god, of the Yanwu continent by the strange energy of the forbidden area. I remember Jun Shang saying that he met someone in the land of the cursed god and fell in love with that person. He even had a physical relationship with that woman. And Miss June and the Little Master are from the Yanwu continent. Han Yi couldn't help but shiver. The most important thing right now is to help their Jun Shang leave a good impression in front of Miss June. Otherwise, what if the polar domain's mistress and heir that are already at the tip of his tongue fly away? As Han Yi is lost in his thoughts, he is suddenly ruthlessly pinched on his waist. Han Yi couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling screech, and his whole body jumps up. Little Shadow, why are you twisting? Halfway through his complaint, he meets Ing Mei's chilly gaze. Han Yi immediately cowers and promptly says with a smile, Little Shadow, you pinched me so hard just now, does it hurt? Do you want me to rub it for you? Ing Mei's face was still cold as he said, men are not good things. Han Yi. But when he remembers that the treasures he wanted to show off were all wasted on Di Mingju, he gnashes his teeth in hatred. I tell you, Di Ju, I Jujo. Xiao Chang Han Xiao Jiu Tian Tian, Xiao Zhang Zhang Xiao Lao 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 to S Chang. Chang. Elder Chang nodded with a smile. Han Xiao Xiao Chang Han Xiao Xiao to Han 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 Xiao again, Xiao. Han Chang 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 to, Chang Chang. Han Chujo wanted to say something, but suddenly, a loud bang was heard in the room. Their expressions changed, and they hurriedly rushed in. Everyone's expression changed when they saw the scene inside. Jun Shang, what are you doing? Why did you activate the Qinquan mirror? Chapter 3981. Di Mingju, whose face is still pale and without a trace of blood, has stood up and walked to the Qinquan mirror. The originally dim bronze mirror surface of the Qinquan mirror is now emitting a white light. Obviously, the space-time passage has been opened. Di Mingju doesn't even wear a coat. He only wears a thin, blood-stained undergarment and goes to the Qinquan mirror. Defeating armies rushes over and stands in front of the Qinquan mirror. Jun Shang, you are seriously injured and your godhead is unstable. You must not travel through the space barrier again. Di Mingju's face is cold, but there seems to be a fierce and urgent flame burning in his eyes. Get lost. Jun Shang, what happened in the end? Even if it's an urgent matter, wait until the injury is healed before going. Han Chujio's nose is crooked in anger. If it weren't for Elder Chang holding him back, he would have rushed over and grabbed Di Mingju's hair. Bastard, you wasted so many of my treasures and you still dare to court death. Damn, if you want to die so much, Laozi will help you now. Elder Chang quickly pulls back the jumping Han Chujio and anxiously says, Jun Shang, if you have something to do, just tell us. You don't need to do it yourself. Di Mingju raises his hand and waves out his energy, directly pushing defeating armies away. His lips overflow with a little blood. But he doesn't even bother to wipe it. His figure flashes and he is already in front of the Qinquan mirror. Jun Shang. You can't. Xing Lang rushes over and hugs his leg, begging in a hoarse voice, Jun Shang, what are you going to do? This subordinate will do it for you. I only ask you to take care of your own life. They know very well what the collapse of Godhead means. Di Mingju's life was saved by Han Chuzhou's painstaking efforts. A little carelessness, and his old injury will relapse and he will disappear in a puff of smoke. Di Mingju snaps, "Let go." Han Yi kneels down, "Jun Shang, please think twice." Ing Mei kneels down, "Jun Shang, please think twice." Defeating armies also slowly kneels on the ground, "Jun Shang, please think twice." Xing Lang chokes with sobs, "Jun Shang, if you don't care about your life and go alone, why don't you kill this subordinate first?" Di Mingju closes his eyes, the voice that comes out of his mouth is indescribably hoarse and weak. "Mayan is calling me, I'm going to find her. I promised that I would never leave her alone. I would never let anyone hurt her." However, he broke his promise. In the land of the cursed god, he had sensed that Mu Yan was in danger, and he had also heard the call from the void spirit ring. However, he couldn't get out. Even if he disregarded the loss of his own divine energy and the collapse of his godhead to risk his life to break the land of the cursed god's shackles, it was too late. No more spiritual power fluctuations came from the void spirit ring. Chapter 3982. Suddenly, Ing Mei points at the void spirit ring on Di Mingju's finger. His complexion greatly changes, and his voice trembles. "Miss June, what happened to her? Why does the void spirit ring have so many cracks?" The void spirit ring was made by Di Mingju using his own and Mu Yan's hair, and then linking it with a wisp of his soul. Even if they were in different worlds, they could still sense each other. When one side was in trouble, the other side would use their god essence/soul essence to prolong the other's life and rescue them. "With my spirit, I will save your soul. I will use my divine essence/soul essence to nourish your life force." The ethereal spirit ring was indestructible, impervious to fire and water. Even if the void spirit ring took over another body, it would follow the soul. Only under one circumstance would the ethereal spirit ring shatter. That was, if one of the two sides was like a lamp that had run out of oil, even the gods would not be able to save him. Now, Di Mingju's godhood has stabilized. However, cracks had appeared in the void spirit ring. What did that mean? The spiritual energy on Di Mingju's body vibrates, sending the star wolf flying. "Jun Shang." At this moment, even Elder Chang's expression changed. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "My lord, the void spirit ring is broken, and the 3 souls and 7 spirits are scattered. It's useless even if you rush over. Let's go to the floating island and bring Miss June back, okay? Shall we bring her back and let little Joe treat her?" Xing Lang desperately nodded his head. "Jun Shang, this subordinate swears to you that even if I die, I will bring Miss June back safely. Jun Shang, this subordinate is begging you not to go." Di Mingju's hand is placed on the Qianquan mirror, his expression cold and calm, just like in the past. However, what he said made Elder Chang and the others' hearts sink bit by bit. "Since the 3 souls and 7 spirits are scattered, I'll give my 3 souls to her and use my 7 spirits to complete her. I'm at the end of my rope, so I'll use my divine essence to nurture her back bit by bit. I am Yinyan's husband, Xiaobao's father, but I've done far too little for them. Instead, I've let them suffer for so many years, yet I've paid no attention to them, and I don't know if they know or not. This time, I won't abandon Yanyan again. Even if I die, I want to die with her." Di Mingju lifts up the broken void spirit ring, and gently kisses it on the lips. He then looked at the people in the room and said in a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry, I'm not a good emperor. If I don't come back this time, you guys can wear sunglasses and become Emperor Fu." Jun Shang. In the midst of the mournful cries, Di Mingju's figure suddenly enters the Qianquan mirror, disappearing without a trace. The room fell into a deathly silence. Han Chujo reacted first. Idiot, what are you doing? Chapter 3983. Chang Lao's eyelids slightly drooped, covering the light in his eyes. He didn't speak. Just when Han Chujo thought that he would answer, a faint voice came to her ears. The Emperor of the Polar Domain may change, but no matter where and when, I will only assist one Emperor. Who are the others? Are they qualified for me to support them? Han Chujo froze and looked at Chang Lao in surprise. Then, he couldn't help but laugh. It's just that his laughter has the unique sound of a young man. Not only does it not seem bold and rough, but it is also immature and cute. So, after laughing twice, he stopped with a black face. This damned curse, damned it. Han Chujo calmed herself down and hooked her arm around Chang Lao's neck. Then, she said in a clear voice, Gu, you have been as kind as Mithraea for the past 2 years. I thought your temper had been polished, and you only know how to work like a horse for the Emperor of the Polar Domain. Only today did I realize that you are still the unstoppable Chang Ying from back then. Chang Lao glanced at him. Han Chujo softly said, Brother, rest assured, that Di Mingju will be fine. I divined his fortune in the past, he still has a long life. Chang Lao, how come I don't know when little Zhou learned divination? Han Chujo shamelessly said, In this world, I am the only one who doesn't want to learn, but there is nothing that I, Han Chujo, cannot learn. Chang Lao patted his forehead, then stepped forward and gently wiped the bronze mirror with his old hand. His voice was soft, with infinite exhaustion and disappointment. Guangzhou and Shang cannot live. It was not easy to find Miss June and Little Master. If they die, Guangzhou and Shang will lose half of his life. Even if they are saved, I'm afraid he will only be a walking corpse, without any happiness. Han Chujo couldn't bear to see Chang Lao so sad. She racked her brains to comfort him. Suddenly, her body became light, and she felt dizzy. When she recovered, she was already back in the Medicine King hole. Bang! Han Chujo heavily punched the alchemy furnace beside him. His handsome and lovely face was distorted. Damn curse! Forcefully trapping him in this Medicine King hall to death, all alone, powerless to do anything. How many more years was he going to be trapped? To the extent that he, a 7-foot man, became a baby in swaddling clothes. Han Chujo took a deep breath and said while gritting her teeth, Don't be angry, don't be angry. If he died of anger, wouldn't that be fulfilling that bastard's wish? Heh, what's there to be angry about? Anyway, my precious disciple is about to arrive. She can grow the red spider lily and the yellow springs fruit. She can it would definitely be able to bring him out of this cold grave. Han Chujo slowly closed her eyes and slammed her whole body on the low couch. Wait! Suddenly, he jumps up from the couch. Didn't Di Mingju say that he likes my precious disciple? Chapter 3984. It's the edge of the floating island. Or it's another vast continent. Even Lan Xiaozi and Lan Chushi, who created the floating island, don't know about this. Because no one has ever reached the edge of the floating island. Even if it's a profound immortal powerhouse, if they want to explore the edge of the floating island, they will fall into an endless flight. The mountains, deserts, and sea surrounding the floating island are so vast, so distant, that people will never be able to touch the end. The edge of the floating island, for most of the cultivators on the island, is an eternal mystery. But most of them obviously don't include Di Mingju. He doesn't even need to deliberately explore, He only needs to release his divine sense to know what the edge of the floating island is. It's a passageway with layers of spatial barriers. As long as you get close, you'll be confused by the folded space, thinking that you've been flying on the sea. But you won't realize that you've actually reached the edge of the island. These barriers wrap up the entire floating island, isolating it from the world, and forming a protection. So that the people on the island won't fall from the edge because of some accident, and eventually be torn apart by the space-time crack. This is the recognition and gift of the heavenly Tao to this refuge world created by Lan Xiaozi. Bystanders can't find such barriers, but Di Mingju's eyes can see them clearly. At this time, he's searching inch by inch along the barrier to the north of the Bohai Sea. Di Mingju's injuries are extremely serious. When he passed through the spatial barrier passage through the Qinquan mirror, he was torn apart by the space-time power. Right now, his whole body is burning hot, and even his thoughts have become chaotic and unclear. In the depths of his soul, there seems to be something struggling, clamoring to rush out. Di Mingju doesn't know how long he's been searching, whether it's from dawn to dusk, or from dusk to dawn. His divine sense is clearly so powerful, covering every inch of the seabed and sea surface, but he hasn't found any trace. The remorse and pain in his heart deepens little by little as time goes by. Wherever his divine sense goes, even an ant can be detected, but he can't find any trace of Mu Yan. Does that mean that Mu Yan has already? Di Mingju doesn't dare to think of such an ending. Just when he's almost in despair, he finds an isolated island in the Bohai Sea. It was an extremely small and inconspicuous island. The surroundings were bare except for a sparse patch of ironleaf wood in the center of the island. Ironleaf wood was a very common spirit plant on the floating island and the cultivation continent. Other than being hard, it didn't have any other effect. Previously, Di Mingju's divine sense had swept over this place several times, but he hadn't detected anything unusual, so he had swept past. But when he swept his gaze over the island again, his movements paused. There were a few sea beasts lying on the sand and rocks around the small island. This was a very common thing. Sea beasts would naturally choose to rest on small islands. However, the strange thing was that there were simply too many sea beasts on this island. Moreover, every single one of them was of an extremely high level, and their bodies were emitting powerful spiritual fluctuations. It seemed to be coveting something. But on a small isolated island, there was only the ironleaf wood, an ordinary spirit plant that didn't bear fruit. What could the sea beasts covet? Di Mingju withdrew his thoughts and the divine power within his body surged. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived on the isolated island. The roaring sea beasts surrounding the iron fir forest filled Di Mingju's aura. He was immediately frightened into silence. Chapter 3985. Each and every one of them has a horrified expression in their eyes. Di Mingju doesn't pay attention to them, and instead quickly enters the ironwood forest. Almost as soon as he enters the forest, an aura that was originally shielded by some kind of energy is reflected in his mind along with his divine sense. Di Mingju raises his hand and firmly clasps the ironwood branch. He clenches his teeth, trying his best to control himself so that his godhead doesn't collapse due to the violent fluctuations of emotions. In the sparse ironwood forest, several sea beasts have already drilled in, surrounding an open space in the middle of the forest. They bare their sharp fangs, their huge vertical pupils revealing a greedy and longing light as they slowly approach the open space. Drool drips all over the ground. And in the center of the open space, there's a little boy holding a sword. His small body is covered in blood, his clothes are tattered, and there's a half-conscious rabbit lying at his feet. When the sea beasts approached, he was already so tired that he couldn't even lift the sword in his hand. When he sheds the sword, he has to rely on the body of the sword to barely stand. But that little back is still perfectly straight. That pair of icy blue eyes are so young and tender, but they're filled with reckless determination and madness. Because he can't retreat. Behind him lies a woman with a cold body. Her eyes are closed, and her chest isn't moving up and down, as if she's dead. That's his mother. If he retreats, his mother will be eaten by these sea beasts. Deming-ju takes a step forward, and the pressure of an immortal emperor is suddenly released. The sea beasts coveting the delicious food don't even have time to make a sound before they're torn to pieces, turning into a bloody mist that dissipates into the air. Deming-ju walks towards that little figure. But as soon as he takes a step closer, a sharp and cold sword light whistles over. He doesn't dodge, and lets the blade cut him. Once, and then again. One sword, and then another. It's clearly the flesh that's hurt, but the real pain is in his heart. It's like it's going to explode, making his vision blur. Finally, Deming-ju walks in front of the little boy, and reaches out to hold him in his arms. That little figure is still desperately struggling. His icy blue eyes are bloodshot and tyrannical, but they're almost unfocused. He's already reached his limit. Only the willpower to protect his mother is supporting him. Xiaobao, it's all right. Daddy is here. Xiaobao, you've done well. Mother will be fine. Let Daddy save her, okay? The violent struggle in his arms gradually came to a stop. The pair of ice-blue eyes that had lost focus gradually reflected his figure. His chapped lips opened and closed slightly, but what came out was a voice so hoarse that it could break one's heart. Father, Deming-ju only feels a hand clenching his heart, making him almost unable to breathe. It's Daddy. As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized how choked they were. Xiaobao, Daddy's here. Tears slowly gathered in her icy blue eyes, and silently rolled down her cheeks drop by drop. Why? Why did you only come now? A child's voice was supposed to be childish, crisp, and carefree. However, little Treasure's voice was so hoarse that it made one's heart feel like it was about to be crushed. I've been calling Daddy. I've been calling Daddy to save Mother, save Martial Uncle. Why didn't you appear? Daddy is bad. I hate Daddy. Mother has lost so much blood, Martial Uncle and Martial Uncle, as well as Martial Granduncle, they're all dead. Xiaobao couldn't do anything, and could only pray to heaven to let Daddy come faster. But Daddy didn't come, why? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.